My name is Emma, and I've always believed family comes first. I grew up in a modest home in Springfield with my parents and my older sister Julia. Julia was always the star of the family, prettier, more popular, and somehow always getting what she wanted. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but sometimes living in her shadow was hard. I work for Market Tech Solutions as a marketing analyst. I'd been there for 5 years, grinding away, staying late, and taking on extra projects. Last Tuesday, my boss called me into his office, and I was sure I was in trouble for something. "Emma, take a seat," Mr. Thompson said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I've been watching your performance over the past year, and I'm impressed." I shifted nervously in my chair, waiting for the but that usually followed such statements. "We're opening a new branch in Colorado, and I'd like you to head up the marketing department there. It comes with a substantial raise and, of course, relocation expenses covered. Think about it and let me know by the end of the week." I floated through the rest of the day. This was it, the break I'd been waiting for. A chance to prove myself, to step out of Julia's shadow, to make my own path. I couldn't wait to tell my family. That evening, I practically skipped into my parents' house for our weekly family dinner. Julia wasn't there yet. She was now married to David, a successful accountant, and they lived across town. "You look happy," Mom said as she stirred the spaghetti sauce. "I am. I got some amazing news today. Wait till everyone's here." When Julia and David arrived, we all sat down to eat. Dad poured the wine, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I got promoted," I blurted out. "They want me to head up marketing at the new Colorado branch." "Colorado?" Mom's face fell, "but that's so far away." "I know, but it's such an amazing opportunity. The salary is almost double what I'm making now." Mom put down her fork. "Emma, this isn't a good time for you to leave." "What do you mean?" Mom glanced at Julia, who suddenly looked down at her plate. "Julia has been struggling since the baby was born. The doctor diagnosed her with postpartum depression." I looked at my sister in shock. Julia had given birth to my nephew Ethan just 2 months ago. She seemed tired, sure, but I hadn't realized things were that serious. "I'm sorry, Julia, I had no idea," I said. Julia dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I didn't want to worry anyone, but it's been really hard." Mom reached over and squeezed Julia's hand. "She needs family support right now. David works such long hours, and they can't afford a full-time nanny." "We were actually thinking," Dad added, "that it might be best if Julia and David moved in here for a while, just until she gets better." I felt my dream slipping away, but the promotion. "There will be other promotions," Mom said firmly. "Family comes first, Emma. Julia needs you right now." I looked around the table, at my mother's determined face, my father's apologetic one, and Julia's downcast eyes. I thought about the opportunity slipping through my fingers, but also about my tiny nephew who needed his family. "You're right," I said finally, "family comes first. I'll tell Mr. Thompson I can't take the position." The relief on my mother's face was immediate. "You're doing the right thing, Emma." Julia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." A week later, Julia, David, and baby Ethan moved into our parents' house. I stayed at my current position but negotiated a small raise. It wasn't Colorado, but it was something. I started giving $2,000 of my monthly salary to help with Julia's medical bills and baby expenses. My routine quickly changed. I'd work all day, come home for a quick dinner, then take over baby duty while my parents cooked and Julia rested. I'd rock Ethan, change diapers, give him baths, and put him to bed. By the time I crawled into my own bed, I was exhausted. But this was temporary, I told myself. Julia would get better, and then life would return to normal. I'd get another chance at advancement. For now, family came first. We Wilsons stuck together through thick and thin. The weeks turned into months, and before I knew it, an entire year had passed. My life had fallen into a predictable routine: work, home, babysit, sleep, repeat. I was exhausted all the time, but I kept telling myself it was worth it for my family. Every morning, I'd rush out of the house while Julia was still too tired to get up with Ethan. Every evening, I'd return to find her lying on the couch, claiming she'd had a terrible day. My parents hovered around her like she might break at any moment. "How are you feeling today, sweetie?" Mom would ask Julia while I warmed up Ethan's bottle. "Still so foggy," Julia would sigh dramatically, "the medication just makes me feel like a zombie." I'd take Ethan from Mom's arms. "I've got him. You two should eat dinner before it gets cold." Ethan was a year old now and becoming more of a handful every day. I'd grown to love my little nephew fiercely, even as I resented how I'd become his primary caregiver while his mother recovered. To be honest, I started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Like the time I came home early from work to find Julia's purse full of shopping bags from the mall. Or how she always seemed to have new clothes and perfect hair and nails despite claiming she couldn't manage to shower some days. "Didn't you say Julia couldn't leave the house yesterday because of her anxiety?" I asked Mom one evening after finding a receipt for lunch at an expensive restaurant in the kitchen trash. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "The doctor says getting out occasionally is good for her. It's all part of the treatment plan." I nodded, but something didn't feel right. I'd seen Julia with her friends through the coffee shop window near my office once. She'd been laughing, animated, nothing like the dejected woman who could barely make it off the couch when I was around. Then there was the day everything changed. I woke up with a splitting headache that even extra-strength pain relievers couldn't touch. By noon, I could barely see straight, so my boss told me to go home and rest. I hadn't called ahead to tell anyone I was coming home early. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Julia's favorite shoes weren't by the door where she always kicked them off. Odd, since she'd told me she hadn't felt well enough to get dressed in days. I quietly let myself in, planning to go straight to my room and lie down. That's when I heard it, Julia's unmistakable laugh ringing out from the kitchen. Not a polite chuckle or a weak smile, but her full-bodied, head-thrown-back laugh that I hadn't heard in months. And then, I heard her say between laughs, "Melissa ordered another round of mimosas," and we completely lost track of time. The waiter had to remind us they were closing for the afternoon. I stood frozen in the hallway, my headache momentarily forgotten. This didn't sound like someone suffering from debilitating depression. I pushed open the kitchen door. Julia was sitting at the table with Mom, both of them smiling over coffee and the leftover cake from Dad's birthday. The moment Julia saw me, her face transformed. The smile vanished, her shoulders slumped, and she reached for a tissue. "Emma," she said in that fragile voice I'd grown used to, "I didn't expect you home so early." "I have a migraine," I said, watching her closely. I couldn't concentrate at work. Mom immediately jumped up. "Oh, you poor thing. Let me get you some tea and an ice pack." "No need," I said, still looking at Julia. "What were you two laughing about?" It sounded funny. Julia and Mom exchanged a quick glance. "Oh, just a silly commercial on TV," Mom said. "I thought I heard you talking about mimosas and a waiter." Julia dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. "Just a story from before, you know, before Ethan. Sometimes Mom makes me talk about happier times. Dr. Harrison says it helps." That night, after putting Ethan to bed, I confronted Mom in the kitchen while Dad watched TV and Julia took one of her long therapeutic baths. "Mom, is Julia really still suffering from postpartum depression? It's been a year, and sometimes she seems fine." Mom tensed as she dried a plate. "Of course she is, why would you ask that? I heard her laughing today, talking about going out with friends." "That doesn't sound like someone with severe depression." "Emma," Mom said firmly, "mood swings are part of her condition. Some days are better than others. Don't make judgments about things you don't understand." "I'm not judging, I just want to make sure we're actually helping her, not enabling." "Enabling?" Mom's voice rose. "Your sister is sick. She's getting treatment. It's not your place to question her illness." I backed down, but that night, I couldn't sleep. I grabbed my laptop and started researching postpartum depression. I read article after article about symptoms, treatments, and timelines. Yes, mood swings were mentioned, but what I was seeing with Julia didn't match the overall picture. Women with PPD typically struggled to care for their babies, yet Julia had no trouble handing Ethan off to me and disappearing. They often neglected self-care, but Julia never missed her hair appointments or shopping trips. Most articles said recovery usually began within a few months with proper treatment. It had been a year, and Julia seemingly hadn't improved at all, at least not when I was around. The next morning, I tried talking to Mom again. I showed her some of the articles I'd found. "I'm just concerned," I said carefully, "these symptoms don't really match what we're seeing with Julia." Mom snatched my phone. "What is wrong with you?" "I spoke with Dr. Harrison yesterday, and he said Julia's case is particularly difficult. Her recovery isn't going to follow some internet checklist." I backed off, but I didn't stop watching. For the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to Julia's behavior patterns. I noticed how she'd perk up when she thought no one was looking, how she'd immediately text on her phone but hide it when I entered the room, how her bad days conveniently coincided with family responsibilities she wanted to avoid. Something wasn't right, and I was determined to find out what it was. Around this time, I got some good news at work. Mr. Thompson called me into his office again. "Emma, I know you weren't able to take the Colorado position last year, but I want you to know your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. We're promoting you to senior marketing analyst. It comes with a 15% salary increase." I almost cried with relief. After everything that had happened, finally something good. "Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, this means a lot to me." That evening, I decided not to tell my family about it. Something told me they'd find a way to claim most of that extra money for Julia's treatment or some other emergency. So I kept quiet and continued giving them the same $2,000 per month I'd been contributing all along. The rest went straight into my savings account. By this point, I was completely burned out. Working full-time and then coming home to be Ethan's primary caregiver was taking its toll. I hadn't had a vacation in over a year, hadn't even had a weekend to myself. I needed a break before I completely lost it. "I'm thinking of taking some vacation time," I announced at dinner one night. "Just a week." I was looking at packages to Hawaii. "Hawaii?" Mom looked up from feeding Ethan. "That sounds expensive." "I've been saving, and there's a good deal right now. I need some time away." "I think that's a great idea," Dad said, surprising me with his support. "Everyone needs a break sometimes." Julia nodded. "You should definitely go, Emma. You've been so helpful with Ethan, you deserve it." Their easy agreement made me suspicious, but I was too excited about the prospect of a vacation to dwell on it. I booked my flight and a room at a beachfront hotel for the second week of May, just a month away. For the first time in ages, I had something to look forward to. I mentioned my trip frequently over the next few weeks, partly because I was excited and partly to make sure everyone remembered I'd be gone. I even put it on the family calendar in the kitchen and arranged for extra time off work. The day before my departure, I came home from work to find Julia and David in the living room, surrounded by suitcases. "What's going on?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. David looked apologetic. "Julia's doctor thinks she needs specialized treatment. There's a facility in Malibu that offers an intensive program for treatment-resistant postpartum depression." "Malibu," I repeated. "When are you going?" "Tomorrow morning," Julia said, "for a week." "A week? But that's..." "We know it overlaps with your vacation," Mom interrupted, coming in from the kitchen. "It's unfortunate timing, but Dr. Harrison says Julia can't wait any longer for this treatment." "So who's going to watch Ethan?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We were hoping you could postpone your trip," Dad said, "just for a few weeks." I stood there, stunned by their audacity. "My flight is tomorrow. I'll lose the deposit on the hotel and the money for the plane ticket." Julia's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I didn't plan for this to happen, but Dr. Harrison says this program could be what finally helps me get better." I looked at their faces, Julia's calculated tears, Mom's stern expression, Dad's guilty avoidance, and David's obvious discomfort. Something inside me snapped. Fine, I said tightly, I'll cancel my trip. Later that night, after making the calls to cancel everything and losing nearly $800 in non-refundable deposits, I sat on my bed and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time: pure, unadulterated anger. This was too convenient, too perfectly timed to ruin my plans. The next morning, Julia and David left for their treatment program in Malibu. Mom and Dad went out too, Dad to golf and Mom to her book club. I was alone with Ethan, as usual. After putting him down for his nap, I stood in the hallway, staring at Julia and David's bedroom door. I'd never snooped before, but now I needed to know the truth. I pushed open the door and began searching. The dresser drawers contained nothing unusual. The closet was full of new clothes with tags still on them. I checked the bedside tables, nothing. No prescription bottles, no doctor's notes, no therapy worksheets. Nothing to indicate Julia was in treatment for anything. Then I spotted her laptop on the desk, still open and unlocked. I hesitated only a moment before sitting down to look. Her email and social media were open in various tabs. I clicked on her Facebook messages and found a long thread with her friend Melissa, the same Melissa from the mimosa story I'd overheard. My hands shook as I scrolled through weeks of messages. Julia complaining about having to act depressed when I was around, and then I saw my name. Melissa, does Emma suspect anything? Julia, no way, she's such a naive fool, doesn't notice a thing. Just hands over the cash and babysits for free, it's almost too easy. I felt sick as I kept reading. Julia, I'm thinking we can stretch this out for at least another year. Then I can recover, get back to work, and put Ethan in daycare. By then Emma won't be as useful anyway. Melissa, your parents are still on board? Julia, totally, they'll tell Emma I'm cured when we decide it's time. They love having their favorite daughter and grandson living with them, and Emma's money helps everyone. It's a perfect setup. Melissa, you're a master of intrigue, Jules. But don't you feel bad about taking advantage of your sister? Julia, why should I? She's always been jealous of me anyway. Besides, she can afford it. And we've saved so much on childcare this year. I sat back, my whole body numb with shock. It was all a lie, every tearful episode, every bad day, every excuse. Julia had been faking her depression for an entire year while I worked myself to exhaustion caring for her child and giving them my money. And my parents knew, they were in on it. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, can you have dinner ready by 6? We're bringing home Chinese for ourselves but forgot to ask what you want. They weren't even bringing food for me. It was such a small thing, but somehow it crystallized everything. I snapped photos of Julia's conversations as evidence, then closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal while secretly making arrangements. I called my friend Stacy, who'd been urging me to get away from my family for months. I need a place to stay while I look for an apartment, just for a few weeks. Stay as long as you need, Stacy said without hesitation, I've got your back. I waited until the day before Julia and David were due to return from their treatment program in Malibu, which was probably just a luxury vacation. I'd seen their social media posts that they thought were hidden from me: poolside drinks, spa treatments, beach walks. That evening, I started packing my bags while my parents were downstairs watching TV with Ethan. When I came down with my suitcases, the look on their faces was priceless. Emma, Mom stood up, what's going on? I'm leaving, I said simply. Dad frowned, what do you mean you're leaving? You can't leave now, Julia's not even home. Exactly, Julia's not home because she's on vacation in Malibu, not getting treatment for an illness she doesn't have. My parents exchanged panicked glances. Emma, you're not making any sense, Mom said, her voice wavering. Julia is very sick, she's at a specialized treatment facility. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken of Julia's messages with Melissa. She's been faking it, for a year, and you both knew. Mom's face went white, Dad started stammering about misunderstandings. You've all been using me, I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. You took my money, you took my time, you made me give up a promotion and cancel my vacation. You used me as a free babysitter and an ATM. Emma, this is all a misunderstanding. Dad tried, we were just trying to help Julia. No, you were helping Julia at my expense. You've always favored her, but this goes beyond favoritism, this is fraud. Mom switched tactics, her voice hardening. You're being ridiculous, we're one family, we help each other. Help each other, I laughed bitterly, when have any of you helped me? I've calculated exactly how much you've taken from me. $24,000 from my salary over the past year, plus approximately $12,000 in childcare services if I'd been paid as a babysitter. You owe me $36,000. Dad stood up, his face reddening, now you're being absurd. We don't owe you anything, that's what family does. No, Dad, family doesn't lie and manipulate each other. Family doesn't fake mental illness to avoid responsibility. If you don't pay me back, I'll take you to court. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. I have Julia's messages admitting the fraud. I have bank statements showing all my transfers. I even have the receipt from the treatment center in Malibu, which is actually a luxury resort and spa. I'm sure David's employer would be very interested to know he participated in this scheme. Dad's face paled. You'd destroy your sister's marriage? Break up this family? You already broke this family when you decided to exploit me, I replied. I'm giving you 1 week to transfer the money to my account. If you don't, I'll file charges and make sure everyone knows what you did, relatives, friends, your church congregation, everyone. This is outrageous, Mom sputtered, after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom? Besides take my money and time? I've been working full-time and coming home to be a parent to a child that isn't even mine, while his actual mother goes shopping and meets friends for drinks. I picked up my bags and headed for the door. You can't just leave, Mom called after me. What about Ethan? I turned back, my hand on the doorknob. Ethan has 2 parents and 2 grandparents. Maybe it's time they started acting like it. I walked out and didn't look back, even as I heard my mother calling my name. Stacy was waiting in her car at the curb. When I got in, she squeezed my hand. You okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. 3 days later, I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment near my office. It was small but perfect. Mine. No one to take advantage of me, no one to make me feel guilty for putting myself first. When Julia and David returned from Malibu, they blew up my phone with calls and texts. At first, they were angry, then apologetic, then pleading. Julia, please talk to us, we didn't mean for things to go this far. David, Emma, we're truly sorry, let's meet and work this out. I didn't respond to any of them. 1 week after I left, exactly as I'd warned, I received a bank transfer notification. $36,000 from Julia and David's joint account, no message attached. Julia, we sent the money, can we talk now? I finally replied, I got what I needed from you, don't contact me again. Then I blocked their numbers, emails, and social media accounts. I did the same for my parents when they tried to reach out. It's been 6 months now since I walked away from my family. Sometimes I miss them, or rather, I miss who I thought they were. I miss the idea of being part of a family that truly cared about each other. But I don't miss being used and taken for granted. I'm still at Market Tech, but there are rumors about a new branch opening in Austin next year. I've already told Mr. Thompson I'm interested. The farther from this city and the memories it holds, the better. Sometimes I lie awake at night and wonder if I'll ever be able to forgive them. Not for their sake, but for mine. The anger and betrayal still burn inside me, making it hard to trust anyone new. But I'm working on it, I'm saving for a down payment on my own home. In 2 years, I should have enough. Stacy thinks I should try therapy, and maybe she's right. Not everyone is like my family. Not everyone will use me if I let them in. The other day, I ran into Julia at the grocery store. I was in the produce section when I heard Ethan's voice calling Emma, Emma. I turned to see him reaching for me from a shopping cart. He's almost 2 now and talking more. Julia stood frozen beside him, looking like she'd seen a ghost. For a moment, I felt a pang of longing. I missed that little boy. But then I remembered everything his mother had done, everything my parents had enabled. I put down the apple one was holding, turned, and walked away. Julia didn't follow me. Maybe someday I'll create a new family, one built on honesty and mutual support rather than exploitation. But for now, I'm focusing on healing, on building the life I deserve, on remembering that I matter too. And when that transfer to Austin comes through, I'll be ready for a fresh start. A new city, new people, new possibilities. A chance to define myself not as Julia's sister or Ethan's aunt or the family doormat, but simply as Emma, a woman who finally learned to put herself first.